Hi guys, Ian here. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made a hex key, or an Allen key if you're from the UK, into these basalt column bases for my Legion of Azgorh army. Couple of molds involved. I've got molding tutorials already on the YouTube channel, one for push molds and one for silicone molds. I'll link those below. I will link the company I use for all my mold gear as well in the bottom. But yeah, this is how you turn a iron hex key into some basalt columns, plaster, resin, and then a resin base. That's a solid resin base, by the way. Right, let's get to it. Thanks, guys. Right, step one, you're going to need yourself a hex key. I've got some 2-part silicone putty already wrapped around mine. It's got a nice flat base on it, because you're going to want to be able to pull it off and stand them up, because you're going to be filling these with plaster, because you're going to need to carve them. So I'm using a 3/4 inch hex key. I think that's around 12 mil, 15 mil UK. It's the largest hexagonal shape I had, and also the best shape for the size of the models I'm using. So mix your 2-part putty, again link in the video, and wrap it around the end. Wait for it to cure. I had my daughter help me with this. She really enjoyed it. Pictures on my Instagram page if you want to see. I made a short one and a long one because I only had one of these size Allen keys. So got loads of those. I've actually got quite a few. I made quite a few, you see, because I was going to do loads of these. And then what you need to do is you need to pour in some dental plaster. I use dental plaster because it's harder than plaster of Paris, but you can use plaster of Paris if you want to, I believe. And that creates little hexagon columns, long ones. There we go. These are some offcasts that I had. So you can see there, I took a complete mould of this one. That goes straight in. And you pull it out. Push it from the bottom. I actually put holes in the bottom of mine to push all this out with wire, because the holes seal back up again around the silicone. I used a drill bit to push mine out. There we go. And the hole seals back up again. The dental plaster isn't thin enough to come through because the water rises to the top of the dental plaster, and that's the bottom of the mould. Now you can see this is quite rough. This is one I didn't use, obviously. So you use the bits without the air bubbles. So this one again is the rough one. That's one I had earlier. Here's one of the ones that I did use. You can see some of them still have air bubbles, but down the side there, you're not really going to worry about it, because that's going to be the bit that's going to be facing into the column stack. You wouldn't have that shown on the outside. So what I did then was, on these rough columns here, I took a blunt craft knife. This one isn't blunt, so if I cut myself, it's my own fault. And what I did, well, I took this to the top of the... I cut the top off because it was rounded. Yeah, just remembering what I did myself here. You get a nice, odd, rough texture. And then I scraped the top, just to give... It's not perfectly flat. None of them are perfectly flat, because that's nature. It's never perfectly flat. But it gives a nice sort of texture for you. And I did the same with each and every side. So you take your knife and just scrape it down. If it stops and makes divots, that's even better, because that will be the layers of lava cooling down in the seawater, which is how I believe the basalt columns were formed. I didn't do any research on how they were formed. I just made these. And you can see this. Now I'm doing this when they've come out of the molds after about an hour. These have had 5 or 6 weeks to cure, so they're rock hard. You need to do it about an hour after they come out of the mold, because they're still easily scrapable. A lot easier than this anyway. And you get a nice texture on them. So this is obviously the old one, and this is the cured one. This is the one that wasn't secured. All right. And what I did with these is, I'll intersperse a picture and show you. So I made a mold of all of these. I made 3 molds, in fact. I will show you now. I stuck all of these down to a piece of card. I used a plastic tub around them and made a mould. So they're the small ones, they're the medium ones, and they're the really long ones. I only made a few long ones because I only wanted to use those on Cinderbreath's base. And I'll show you Cinderbreath now. Excuse my fingers. There he is. So I used the long ones on his base so he could prop himself up. There is a rod going from his heel into this column here to his heel, all the way through into his back leg. It's quite a long and nervy process drilling that all the way through that leg. And that's the rest of the base is done so far. So yeah, so I made one mould, the blue one, for the plaster. Made a secondary mould for the green ones, and then I cast the resin ones. Now, I knew I needed several hundred of these for these bases, but I think I went a bit OTT. So I made quite a few here. And sometimes you get the convex in them, and a concave as well. Convex is out, concave is in, because of the resin. It's quite difficult to pour resin into these when it's going off, so you've got to be quite quick pouring it into these. So I will now forward to the part. I'll do some, I'll talk over the next few videos because when I recorded them, I was in the shed and it was quite noisy with the air compressor. I'll put some lovely music on and you'll see some time-lapse pictures of me actually making a base. There isn't a shot of me pouring any resin onto the base, so I glued the resin versions of the columns straight onto the base, and it literally had base texture and the columns. And what I did then was I took some quick setting two-part fast cast resin and poured a thin stream around all the open space and used a toothpick just to get it right to the edge and let that cure really hard overnight. And then that gave it a really smooth surface for me to mould the 4 bases. I'll show you the mould as well. I'll show you the pulling out of the mould and stuff. There'll be a few more videos and a few more clips on this. And that enabled me to make these resin bases. So, okay. Here comes the next few parts and I'll be talking over them. Thanks, guys. Right, here's a quick little time lapse for you. I'm adding the resin columns to the base. I'm using really cheap super glue from a pound shop. 4 for £1 or $1 if you're a dollar store, if you're in the States. I'm just putting them on in rows and making sure that the hexagons stick together. It's important to leave some bits around the side for where the lava would be creeping up to these. You can also put the sea on these or swamp or anything like that, but I chose to use lava for the type of models that I'm using. You'll see I'll be adding these larger ones here, which will be removed in a second. I'm going to test fit one of the bull centaurs now. You can see with the hoof at the front, it doesn't quite fit, so I have to pull these 3 off and add some smaller ones. And then we'll do another test fit, and it will fit fine. Happy with that. One more, and then we're done. So yeah, so I made the bases. Right, here we have the bases ready to be pulled out of the mould. If you can hear that screaming outside, that's a fox. Apologies. What I didn't show you on the bases was how I made the smoothness of the lava, and that was taking the 2-part fast cast resin and pouring it into the edges and moving it around with a toothpick. But you can see on the bases there when I pull them out that you've got the resin on there and it's quite smooth. Now with the nature of these bases, because the basalt columns weren't even and it's not a watertight gap, rubber is going to get into those gaps and it's going to pull some off the mould, but that doesn't make a difference at all. I fully expected it, and I will pull that off later anyway. It comes out with some of these bases and first 2 or 3 casts. So yeah, that's the mould made for these, and I'll show you a cast, and yeah, there we go. Just poured the first set of bases. Didn't quite make enough resin, but I'll just pour some on top of that. See if we can catch the bloom. Here you can see all the bubbles popping where it warms up. So it's an exothermic reaction where the resin gets sort of hot as it cures, expanding the gas inside the bubbles, making them pop. You should see it go pale in a second, right in the centre. And it takes a while on the edges. Oh, you can just see it there. There you go. That's what they call the bloom. You get a few extra bubbles on the bottom, but there's nothing a bit of sandpaper won't cure. There you go. These have just got to cure. I'll pour a bit of extra resin in that one. And I'll do a demold of these and show you what they look like finally. We've got a second batch of cured resin bases. I did a first batch there. Let's pull these out. Second batch was where I filled in the other one as well, the shallow pour I did. There shouldn't be any stuck rubber this time. Well, there's a tiny bit. There's quite a bit stuck in those, but it should resolve itself eventually. There we go. Yeah, see, a bit more stuck there. But as I do a few more, all of this loose rubber will come out. This is Vallejo Model Air White. Apologies for my very, very, very poor airbrushing skills. I've never been great with it, but you know, we do what we can. So I'm airbrushing the white double coat here, just towards the edges of the base. This is a base layer to brighten the yellow over the black undercoat. Here we have Vallejo Game Air Sun Yellow. Again, it's just covering up the white we've done on the edges. If you leave a bit of white on the in the middle between the columns and the yellow, that's fine. It'll just brighten the orange as well. And the next colour you want to use is Troll Slayer Orange from Citadel. And this is just going to be just behind the yellow and in between the column and the yellow. As you can see me spraying on there. It does cover up quite a bit of the yellow, but leaving a hot spot is perfectly fine. There we go, that's after a second coat. I think I went a bit OTT on that one. And now we're using Citadel Corn Red. And this is basically sprayed right onto the columns at an angle. You get a tiny bit of red to cover the orange stripe. I would have used, if I did use a darker red on the actual basis of the army, as this was a tester. So yeah, that's corn. And now, once that's fully dry, take it indoors because it's warmer than the shed. I'm doing a coat of Cassandori Yellow shade. I did 2 coats of that. Now I am painting all of the columns in Abaddon Black. There you go. Try not to get any on the lava. You'll see shortly I did get a little bit on, but you know, it's not too bad. Now I'm doing a wash, one-to-one wash of Doomball Brown and Larmium Medium all over the tops of the basalt columns. This just ties it in nicely with the base because otherwise they look just a little bit stark. Now, time for the dry brushing. Once the Doomball Brown and the Larmium Medium mix has dried, I dry brush everything over again with Abaddon Black. And then I go on to Skaven Blight Dinge, and then on to Eshing Grey. And that just highlights the tops of the columns. While I'm waiting for those to dry, I use a thin down Caribou Crimson right in the recesses of the lava. So between the corn red and the actual base, right in the recess. That gives a nice dark colour right on the edges, well, right in the depths. Once that's dry, I'm going around the edges of the columns, not on the top, just the edges, with a corn red dry brush and then a Troll Slayer orange dry brush, try and get a glow. And now to get the shine on the lava, I'm using De La Rowney water soluble gloss varnish. Nice heavy load on my brush. Here's the finished base. I forgot to say that I did undercoat the whole base in a black spray paint, high coat matte black, and also black trimmed it as well. Yeah, that's the finished base from start to finish. I'll just do an outro. Thanks, guys. Right, there we go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a little bit messy. I'm still fairly new to this YouTube making malarkey videos. But yeah, if you've got any questions or would like to see me make anything else, please do let me know. I'm quite pleased with the amount of bases I've got. I've still got to make a few more. There will be 18 of the Bull Centaurs in the end. There's still some more in the shed on mould. So I'm not sure if I forgot anything. If you think I've forgotten something, just leave me a question in the comments and I'll answer as best I can. I did add some painted skulls to the bases to break them up a little bit. They were from a previous project that never got off the ground, but the skulls did, which is great. So yeah, as always, as is the fashion, if you could like, comment and subscribe for me, that would be great. If you don't want to, that's fine, just enjoy the video. Hope you can get something out of it. Again, if you think of anything you'd like me to explain a bit more, or would you like me to give a try, let me know. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers.